All right, Dr. G and Andy, how you doing, guys?
Doing great. Good to see you.
It's also awesome to be here with you guys.
Yeah, so let's just go out for just a quick intro here. We've had you guys on a bunch, but for people listening for the first time, we're getting a lot of new listeners, so that's exciting. Dr. G is a renowned board-certified chiropractic neurologist dedicated to holistic health. He's one of America's leading experts in lifelong optimized living. And he's trained thousands of clients and practitioners within his training program and has over 800,000 followers on Instagram. Andrew Cieply, he's a nutrition expert. He's a great movement coach, and he's also the head coach at Co-Movement Gym. The Co-Movement Gym podcast is sponsored by Native Path Supplements, Lombardi Chiropractic, and A Dog's Day Out Doggy Daycare. Mention this podcast or use the promo code in the episode description for a nice discount on us. So this is like a part 2 episode. Our prior chat, we talked about supplements. It's a huge world. It's a $30 billion a year industry. As coaches, I'm sure Dr. G, we get a lot of questions on, what should I be taking? What's the magic pill? What's good? What's bad? Mm-hmm. So, I want to, we're going to go into a bunch of different topics today over the next hour. But first off, Dr. G, you were in Virginia with Dr. Pete Lombardi and went on a cool mountain bike ride there. Tell me about that. How was that experience?
Oh, it was great. We go down to Southwest Virginia to hang out with a buddy of ours who's got a house on the lake there, South Holston Lake. And we decided to go on a bike ride instead of driving the bikes to the Creeper Trail, right? We decided to ride to the Creeper Trail, which was nice because it was like 3 or 4 miles to get to the trail. We all had bikes that didn't fit us and weren't really right for that road. But, that 3 miles was pretty up and down and, definitely had its challenges. And then we got to the Creeper Trail, and the Creeper Trail was like 12 miles of just straight rail path. So it was very, zone 2-ish, mm-hmm. It's some kind of like a steady pace without much as far as hills go. And then, so same thing on the way, we came back the same way and then had to do that 3 mile back to the house. And we had our Strava on, and Pete and I have our zones set almost identical to each other. Mm-hmm. So when we finished the race, not the race, but when we finished the ride, I compared my Strava to Pete's, and it was interesting because he spent 46% of the time in zone 2, and then let's just say 50% of the time in zone 2, 20% of the time in zone 3, 20% of the time in zone 4. Whereas mine was 20% in zone 2, 50% in zone 3, and then 20% in zone 4. We were both 5%, I guess, in zone 5. So we flipped. His zone 2 was 50%. My zone 3 was 50%. So it was good because, and our maximum heart rate and our average heart rate was pretty much almost identical to each other. Mm-hmm. But it just goes to show exactly what the VO2 max testing showed, which is that Peter is in far better shape than I am as far as VO2 max goes. So his VO2 max was 51. I believe mine was 44.5. And I had to keep up with Pete. I had to spend more of my time in zone mm-hmm. 3. And what does that mean to people listening? It really means it means nothing really, but it does mean something to me because at that pace, spending all that time in zone 3, if I were to do that multiple times a week, instead of being in zone 2, spending most of my time in zone 3, that has a lot of oxidative consequences, right? Yeah. It's kind of pro-inflammatory to be steadily in zone 3 for that longer period of time if I were to do it repeatedly. So yes. I would want to not ride with Pete, ride on my own and stay in zone 2. But again, it just goes to show two guys, we're exactly the same age. We're only like 10 or 12 weeks apart as far as our age go. born in the same year. And just to be able to mark the difference being on the same bike ride. Now, we didn't have the same bikes. There's a lot of variables there.
Sure.
It wasn't like a controlled experiment, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool to see that.
That makes complete sense, being your VO2 maxes were, 6 or 7, points apart there. Andy and I have been doing some testing and, some zone 2 dialing in like paces on like flat course and seeing where we are. And so and we have a trainer here that's just getting into running and doing some zone 2 testing. And so here's 3 examples real quick, then we're jumping to supplements. So Rachel's zone 2 right now is about a 1730 for where she needs to be starting off as a new runner.
When you say 1730, you're talking per mile pace?
Per mile. Yep. And my zone 2 right now is at a 1030. And Andy, yours is 930, 945 right now?
930, yep.
930.
About that.
Yeah. So it's just again, it doesn't maybe mean so much to people listening, but it just shows the difference and, paces run at certain heart rates and how it varies person to person. So, yeah, that's cool. That's great. Andy, you want to add anything to that before we dive in?
Well, just that the only thing that would mean to me, I'm not so interested in comparing myself to others, like Dr. G was saying, you were just saying, but it's a great way to keep yourself motivated to see those, to be able to run at faster paces and still be in zone 2, or, to see more time spent in zone 2 than in zone 3 on a typical ride that you do. That's a great way it's a nice thing to track. And as you see those metrics improve, keeps you motivated on your fitness program, lets you know you're going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd say that if you were in the world of elite, being an elite athlete, then you would probably look at lactate threshold. You would look at other measurements, because ultimately, what we're talking about here, if you fall out of zone 2 into zone 3, then what's happening is, there's just less mitochondrial efficiency, right? And we'll talk a little bit about mitochondria when it comes to supplements, but the mitochondria, those engines of energy production, when we're utilizing oxygen in a more efficient way, that is going to take up a lot of the lactate that, if it builds up in your system, will contribute to fatigue. But if you're efficient, then you can recycle that lactate and actually use it for fuel. And it's your mitochondrial density and efficiency and abundance that will drive that. Now, the best way to improve your mitochondrial health and efficiency and density and abundance is doing zone 2 training, right? Mm-hmm. That's just one of the best ways to do it. But the guy who holds the record for the marathon, he ran a sub 2-hour marathon in a very controlled environment, but he did the entire thing, technically in zone 2. There are cyclists in the Tour de France who can maintain 400 watts for an hour. Mm-hmm. That kind of energy production. Whereas for me, 400 watts will last like 30 seconds. I would be completely in full tilt in zone 5. So, that is what we're talking about here, building that efficiency, which is going to ultimately benefit us in every way. If we're talking about the mitochondria in your muscles, well, we're talking about the mitochondria in your body, right? And where do we need mitochondrial health the most as we get older is in our brain and our central nervous system. So doing things as we get older to protect our brains in zone 2 is a very good idea.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. All right, let's talk about fish oil. It's a popular supplement. I've heard lots of different things on my end about it. I've played around with it myself as far as supplementing it on and off. So Andy, take it away with fish oil.
Oh, well, something that interested me on the last podcast, we talked about our top 5 supplements, and Dr. G had said something about how fish oil might have been in his top 5 10 or 15 years ago. But I think we went off to a different topic and he didn't quite elaborate on that. I'm kind of curious to know, have you learned something new about fish oil in recent years? Is it no longer something you would recommend to anyone? Would you recommend it to some people, and to whom and for what reasons?
Oh no, I still I recommend it quite a bit.
Okay.
As far as for myself, now, what do I recommend it for? You guys know that I do a lot of work with blood work. So, when I see someone who has triglycerides that I'd like to see come down and that kind of thing, but, also looking at somebody's lifestyle. If they're just not getting natural source omega-3 content in their food supply, then might as well go ahead and supplement if you're not going to make dietary changes that are significant. I probably consume, I don't know, 5 or 6 containers of sardines or anchovies a week, and the amount of omega-3 in there is massive. So I'm getting wild fish on a regular basis. So I don't feel that I personally need to supplement omega-3 a whole lot, but I think people do need omega-3. Now, there's animal source omega-3 and there's plant source omega-3, and plant source omega-3 is not in the form that we use. We have to be able to convert that into animal source. And we all do that differently, either because of genetics or because of our metabolic health. If you're insulin resistant, you're much less likely to take the omega-3 found in flax seeds or any other plant source and convert it into EPA and DHA, which is the animal source or the form that we utilize and benefit from. So if you're going to take omega-3, I don't think it should be a vegan form, but if you're just hell bent on being vegan, well, then go ahead and get some plant source omega-3. You will convert a bunch of it. You just need to take a whole lot more of it. And with regards to, the benefits of, we can talk a lot about the benefits of omega-3 fat, but we also get omega-3 fat not only from fish source, but there is omega-3 fat in healthy meat, right? So if we're going to have grass-fed, beef, grass-fed and finished, the fat content of that beef is going to have a greater percentage of omega-3 than if it were grain-fed. I think that's pretty much still a well-accepted idea. So I definitely think that, being more carnivore in my lifestyle, I don't need to supplement as much for myself, but my children do. My 21-year-old, she's just, her protein content is chicken and she's not changing. And I need her to get some omega-3 because the chicken's not going to have it or have it in the abundance that I want it. And then, we can certainly discuss what source omega-3 and remember, it is not a saturated fat. It's far more likely to oxidize, and how we take it and in what form and how we store it after the bottle's been opened and all that really matters.
Right. Yeah. That resonate with you, Josh. We both have omega-3, fish oil in our fridge. And I do the same thing. If I'm eating a lot of fish in the week, then I don't bother taking it. But if I go a few days without getting a good omega-3 source, then I will take my fish oil.
Yeah, so much of what Dr. G said reminds me of like how I eat. I'll eat 2-3 cans of that wild caught salmon. I think it's Bar Harbor is the name brand. I'll also eat the sardines from that brand. And then I'm eating a lot of grass-fed, grass-finished beef, in a week. What's interesting, and it got me thinking, Dr. G, when you said, I think you said your 21-year-old eating a lot of chicken. We raise meat birds for our family, so we know exactly the chicken that we're eating. And when I go 4 or 5 days with eating chicken only as my protein source, I don't feel as good as if I'm eating beef or fish. And I think it has something to do with the fat content. I don't know like the specifics, but all I know is that when I check in with my physical self, I feel different and not as good eating just chicken throughout those periods of days. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the omega-3s. Maybe it's saturated fat, it's lacking. I'm not sure, but yeah, I resonate more with the fish and the meat and the beef.
Before we get off of omega threes, Dr. G, did you want to tell us? Can you give us a really brief, like, what are the major benefits that people might be looking for from fish oil or omega threes in their diet? And then also, you mentioned something about storage. Is there something important we should know there?
Yeah, because oils definitely do oxidize very easily based on temperature and light exposure, et cetera. So we're taking an oil from a fish and we're kind of refining it and protecting it and putting some antioxidant value in there. But once that container has been opened, you probably want to keep it refrigerated and also light protected until you fully consume it. And you should probably fully consume that whatever's in that bottle in, I guess between 8 and 12 weeks is probably a good idea. But to have a bottle of omega-3 in your pantry that's not refrigerated, that you opened a year ago and forgot about, and don't start taking those. And if you were to cut that capsule open and if it smells very fishy, well, if you were to go to a fish market to buy fresh fish, you wouldn't want to buy the fish that smells fishy because it's probably been oxidizing and sitting there for a while. The fresher the fish, the less fishy it smells. Same thing's true about the oil. So that's something to consider. I really like, as far as store-bought brands that are out there, I always like the company Carlson's. They have that big, giant, thick glass bottle that's brown, fully light protected, and the oil is just like liquid gold. It smells great, tastes great, really feels like you're getting something that's fresh. You would just keep that in the refrigerator and take it by the tablespoon. More is better. A lot of the research, I think the minimum is 2 grams a day for clinical benefit, and clinical benefit can mean lowering triglycerides, reducing inflammation. There's all kinds of benefits to taking omega-3 that are clinical. So like I said, lowering triglycerides, acting as an anti-inflammatory. Remember, we use our fat to not only produce energy, but we also use our fat to create cell membranes. And if you could just imagine a red blood cell, right? A red blood cell is going around your body through these little capillaries. Some of the capillaries are even smaller in diameter than the actual diameter of a red blood cell. So in order for the red blood cell to get through that little capillary, it needs to be very flexible and pliable. And the flexibility and pliability of those membranes is based on the quality of the fat that they're made out of. Well, what fat are they made out of? They're made out of the fat that you consume. And getting your omega-3 is getting a sufficiency of omega-3 is just a really good idea. I certainly believe there's a minimum amount. So like I said, clinically, the research shows 2 grams is the minimum, but there's added benefit going all the way up to 10 grams. Now, to consume 10 grams of fish oil a day would get pretty expensive. Unless you're eating a lot of cans of sardines and wild fish and getting it in both supplement and food source. But I definitely think, whatever, you have to eat omega-3. You can supplement some additional omega-3 and just make sure that you're consuming it in a reasonable amount of time and you're keeping it refrigerated and light protected.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. And that point about cell membrane fluidity is something I talk to people a lot about, but I'm going to use your example of the red blood cell in microvessels. That's a really good way to picture it.
Look, I mean, the research, you could just go into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to give you research on, omega-3 fatty acids and insulin resistance, omega-3 fatty acids and weight loss, omega-3 fatty acids and cholesterol, there's all kinds of stuff that will come up that, has value. But a lot of it has to do, so if we were to just go to metabolic syndrome where people have challenges with insulin resistance, just by getting omega-3, you're making sure that, again, if a cell is able to maneuver more in an easier fashion in a 3-dimensional environment, the receptors on that cell are going to have more exposure to anything around them. And Well, that means the receptors on the cell include insulin receptors and, glucose receptors and all kinds of receptors. And the more pliable of the environment that they sit, the more likely they are to interact with their environment, making you more sensitive, right? Insulin sensitive, or just you're more likely to have better reactions from glucose to your insulin receptors. And again, that holds true for all hormone receptors, not just insulin. So it's really tough to just talk about one thing. Cells have a lot of receptors, and the more pliable the cell membrane is, the more sensitive to all of the things in the environment the cells will be, making you a healthier person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all our cells have to interact with what's around them, and the more fluid the membrane is, the better they can interact. Yeah.
You said it way faster and better than I did. That was perfect. Yes.
Native Path has been a podcast sponsor of ours since day one, and it's because our clients feel amazing using their supplements. While a lot of products on the market today contain useless fillers and incorrect dosages, Native Path holds to a higher standard. Native Path's ingredients are sourced from only the highest quality, properly combined nutrients, all while being offered at competitive prices. Use code COMO15, that's COMO15 at checkout, and receive 15% off each order. Lombardi Chiropractic has been Co-Movement's trusted chiropractor for the last 14 years. They have worked with hundreds of our clients, and I can confidently say they have the most knowledgeable and holistic approach to care that I have ever seen. Whether you suffer from migraines, low energy, nagging pain, or just simply want to improve your overall health, I highly recommend contacting the team at Lombardi Chiropractic. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast and receive 50% off your initial consultation and x-rays. Here at Co-Movement, we put a lot of energy into helping you become happy, healthy, and strong. But we're not the only ones needing a good workout. That's why a dog's day out is the best place in Central New York for your pet to spend their day. Your dog will be as happy and healthy as you when you let them run, play, and socialize instead of just sitting on the couch waiting for you to come home. Give your dog the active day out that they deserve. Mention this podcast and get a free day of doggy daycare at a dog's day out.
You brought up something earlier, mitochondrial health, and I know that's really important to all of us. Do you want to tell us quickly why mitochondrial health is so important? And then as far as the supplements go, are there supplements that you would use to help improve mitochondrial health? Do you think anything's useful there?
Yeah, the way, so let's just be very clear. The way to improve your mitochondrial health is physical fitness. So let's just say that's the totality of improving your mitochondrial health. Mm-hmm. And then from a nutrient standpoint, you just want to support that, right? So you're not going to take nutrients and sit on your couch and benefit from improved mitochondrial function. But if you're driving the system and you're asking your aging system to get better and to produce more mitochondria and to have bigger and stronger mitochondria, well, then there's nutrients that mitochondria would benefit from, lots of nutrients. So we can go through them. I supplement some of them. So omega-3 is definitely one that has an impact there, but we know the electron transport chain in the mitochondria is affected by CoQ10. Coenzyme Q10 is super important for mitochondrial health. There are, things that are, ancillary to that. So your ability to produce nitric oxide is also going to impact the health of your mitochondria. So things like L-citrulline, an amino acid is often used for improving mitochondrial health. Alpha lipoic acid. There's things like lutein and zeaxanthin, from marigold extract. These are found in a lot of different supplements that support mitochondrial health. And again, if you're out there doing 3 hours a week of zone 2 and really driving the system, well, then those supplements become helpful. And it's nice to just take them in one product, because you don't need a whole lot of, these are like cofactors. You don't need a whole lot of them. They don't need to be all these separate, different, supplements. So there are mitochondrial support formulas out there. I created a multivitamin for my clients called Mito Complete. I called it Mito Complete because it's a multivitamin and mineral that has a special mitochondrial formula in there with a lot of these components to them. So I'm probably missing a few things, but that would be kind of a good. I know L-carnitine is also very beneficial for mitochondrial health. All the B vitamins.
Yep.
So especially vitamin B1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, and 12. They're all cofactors in the whole mitochondrial process. But even B12, we all hear a lot about methyl B12 as opposed to cyano B12, right? The cyanocobalamin or cyano B12 is the man-made version that we hope will convert into the usable form, but it's cheap, it has good shelf stability, and that's what we give to people. But we're all very different in our ability to turn the man-made version into the usable version. So instead of taking cyanocobalamin, we take methylcobalamin. But then we recently discovered adenosylcobalamin, and there's hydroxycobalamin. So I formulate, again, I'm a nutritional supplement formulator. So full disclosure, my products are only available to my clients who are doctors, but our B12 has now adenosyl, hydroxy, and methylcobalamin in there because the adenosylcobalamin is very much involved in that mitochondrial process. And, they all three of them are, but there's additional neurologic benefits to adenosylcobalamin. There's additional benefits to using methylcobalamin, and the hydroxy is very, has a longer half-life and can easily be converted into either of the other two. So that's why we have these three components in them. But I think I covered a lot of, and I'm probably missing a few. And iron. I mean, people who are iron deficient, your mitochondria are not going to work well if you don't have iron. Iron is a very important part of that process, as is copper and other trace minerals.
All right. Well, yeah, based on what you just said, I just want to say a couple things. You mentioned CoQ10 and how important that is in running the electron transport chain. I just want to add in there, because a lot of people take statin drugs, that if you are on statins, it's extra important to take CoQ10. I believe statins will deplete your natural supply of CoQ10, or they block it or something. I'm not sure what the mechanism of action is. But I do know that if you're on a statin, then taking additional CoQ10 is a really, really good idea. And then I just wanted to ask you too, you mentioned like zeaxanthin, astaxanthin, some of these like alpha-lipoic acid. You mentioned a few antioxidants. Do they support mitochondrial health just by protecting the mitochondria from reactive oxygen species during exercise? Is that why they're in there?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. The act of, utilizing fuel, combining it with oxygen in the mitochondria for energy production, there's going to be reactive oxygen species that, if you can reduce that as much as possible, you'll have less damage to the mitochondrial membrane. So remember, just to make it simple, mitochondria is what they call the energy and, the engine of energy production in all of our cells. And the way it does that is it has a inner and outer membrane, and the better the greater the difference is in electrical charge on one side of the membrane compared to the other, the greater the energy output of that mitochondria will be. Now, there's such thing called leaky mitochondria, where those charged particles kind of leak across a weak membrane. So that goes to the omega-3 story. But the weak membrane can occur in the presence of reactive oxygen species. So we want to have that antioxidant activity for the health of our mitochondria.
Josh, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I'm just learning a lot. So a lot of
Well,
good information
what
in
you said
there.
about CoQ10 and statin drugs. So, we use red yeast rice extract for people with cardiometabolic concerns. They're on the fence about getting on statin medication, or they haven't been prescribed statin medication, but they have a family history, and there is a need to address some aspect of their lipids or their cholesterol. So red yeast rice extract is an over-the-counter nutritional supplement that has statin-like activity. As a matter of fact, its active ingredient is called monocolin K, I think, and it's identical to lovastatin medication. I mean, it does exactly the same thing. It's a HMG CoA reductase enzyme inhibitor, which affects the biosynthesis of LDL cholesterol, but it also increases the ability for you to have receptors on your liver to pull LDL cholesterol out of your blood. So the reason I say it with caution is because red yeast rice extract, as much as it's an over-the-counter nutritional supplement that anyone can get anywhere, it has the same mechanism of action, which means the same side effect profile as statin medications do, which it can cause liver enzymes to rise. It can cause muscle pain. And red yeast rice extract is something that if you're going to use it, you probably should use it in a way that's under supervision. But that requires you to take coenzyme Q10 as well. Most red yeast rice extract products have CoQ10 in them, just for that same reason.
Yep. Yeah, a lot do. A lot don't, though. So that's really good to know for
Right.
people.
Right.
One of the directions I wanted to go with this was just to ask you, Dr. G, if there are specific supplements for specific conditions that you find really beneficial. And we could talk about any conditions that you think might be pertinent to this discussion. I had like insulin resistance, for example. You already mentioned the importance of omega-3s. Lipid panel issues. A lot of our clients ask about how to improve their lipid panel. They're worried about high LDL, low HDL, high triglycerides, the health of their cholesterol. Are there supplements that might help with that? Overweight and obesity, immune support. We can go in any direction here, but are there specific supplements for specific conditions that you really like a lot?
Yeah. So just everything you just mentioned really will benefit a great deal from improving your metabolic profile, which just basically means your insulin resistance, right? Because your lipid profile, there is a genetic component to your lipids, but there's also a lifestyle component. And I always say that if you have triglycerides over 100, HDL is below 50, HDL is below 50, LDL is high, and total cholesterol is high, and your total cholesterol to HDL ratio is, above 3.5, that's a metabolic pattern as opposed to a genetic pattern, right? Sometimes we'll see a genetic pattern where HDL is above 50 or above 55, triglycerides are below 100, but total cholesterol and LDL are just really high, right? So that could be a genetic profile. Again, this is all just kind of putting people into the best way to test it, if it's a lifestyle profile or a genetic profile, is to make changes and see what happens, right? So if you improve your blood sugar story, you will improve your lipids. So when it comes to obesity, insulin resistance, just poor metabolic health, I really love to use berberine, because berberine is an alkaloid from a plant that is almost identical in its function in some ways to metformin, which is one of the it's the oldest blood sugar controlling drug that we have. It has a very good safety profile, et cetera. And it's interesting because berberine and metformin, although they're not the same thing, they have a very similar profile as far as side effects and things like that. You actually even dose them the same. But berberine has great, insulin sensitivity effects. It has great cholesterol lowering effects. It has great neuroprotective effects. It's got great immune system effects. I mean, we use berberine for people who have, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or any type of chronic GI issue. There's just a great immunological profile to that product. So I use berberine quite a bit, and I like to combine it with other things because there's different ways to address the insulin resistance story. There's addressing. So berberine is a AMP kinase activator, right? It activates AMPK, which makes it more efficient for you to be in energy balance, right? So when we consume food, we kind of suppress AMPK and we increase mTOR. And then when we're fasting, we kind of decrease mTOR and we increase AMPK. So it has this benefit that people want to experience when they're fasting, right? So you can jump into this blood sugar story in many different areas. So I like to use chromium picolinate. Chromium, it's an element that's been around for a long time. We don't really understand how it affects blood sugar, but we know it does. It's just, we've known that for 5 decades or more. And then there is another component called hesperidin. And hesperidin also, again, has antioxidant value, which is important for blood sugar regulation. It has insulin sensitivity. It actually affects the sensitivity of the insulin receptor so that it needs less insulin to be activated. So you are less likely to become insulin resistant. So berberine, hesperidin, and chromium picolinate in one product exists. And if you're just going to take the berberine, then go ahead and maybe add hesperidin and chromium picolinate to that. I think you'd get an added benefit. But now we're talking about obesity. We're talking about insulin resistance. We're talking about, brain function, right? We're talking about, a lot of different areas that people are concerned about. This is a good supplement to get that stuff in order. Now, I believe the research on all of these things are on people who have metabolic syndrome. I don't know that there's a whole lot of research on you guys using it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
Theoretically, it should still have a similar effect, but you guys are so dialed into your fitness compared to the metabolically challenged person. I don't know if you would experience the added benefit. That's why I don't recommend that people just take it like a vitamin. I recommend it for people to take it therapeutically for a period of time, do things to measure their insulin resistance and their metabolic health, watch it improve, and then take them off of the supplements and see if the benefits continue as long as they continue with the lifestyle change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another condition, so to speak, or a group of conditions, and as a chiropractor, you deal a lot with the joints and how they're structured and everything. What about joint support supplements? We have people taking glucosamine, chondroitin, MSM, hyaluronic acid. What do you think about the efficacy of these sort of things?
So after this weekend, I had a challenge with my foot. So yes, I do think there's benefit there as long as the metabolic stuff has been taken care of. So as long as your uric acid is not crazy high, your C-reactive protein is not high. Like there are a lot of metabolic causes of inflammation in our joints. That's low-hanging fruit. Mm-hmm. I think we discussed the last time the effect that insulin resistance has on your joints. So if you're suffering from insulin resistance and it's causing this systemic inflammatory environment where you have aches and pains in multiple areas, left side of your body, right side of your body, I don't think glucosamine and chondroitin is the answer. I think getting your metabolic house in order is the answer, right? So dial in your diet and your lifestyle to improve that. But if you have a specific chronic problem, let's just say in your left knee, and that's been there for a long time, and you understand it, you know it's been there for a while, you've addressed your metabolic health, and you know you could benefit from something more, I think those are great products. But I wouldn't start there.
Gotcha. Isn't it funny how I keep trying to take us in some directions with different health conditions and stuff, but it always keeps coming back to your metabolic health. That's kind of at the root of everything. And it's like, address that first, because it might be causing every other issue you could possibly have. It affects your whole body. And then address specific things after that.
Yeah, and we started off part one podcast with, you can't out supplement a bad diet and lifestyle, so yeah. Andy, what else here? There's so much good stuff here.
And just knowing what our clients are interested in, if we wanted to hit a couple more things, there's sleep. I mean, people struggle so much with sleep, and obviously that's going to be lifestyle type stuff, but people do wonder, can I take melatonin or valerian root, hops, passion flower, chamomile? Will these things help me? Gut health, Josh, you brought that up on the last podcast. We get a ton of questions about that. Anything to improve the health of your gut, or to help with if you have Crohn's or colitis or IBS. Bone support. I mean, we got a lot of, especially our female clients, worried about osteopenia and osteoporosis. Are there bone support supplements that Dr. G thinks might be beneficial? I keep throwing it on you, Dr. G. You're the pro here.
Yeah, no, I'm not a PhD. I'm a clinician, so I can only state what I've used in practice, which is valuable to people. I mean, there are PhD nutritionists out there who spend their time in a lab, and they, recognize they're very well versed on the research for taking certain supplements and how they affect different conditions. And those research models are very similar to our medicine research models. They're not lifestyle and comprehensive. Whereas my focus in practice is, how do I address things from many different directions without isolating one thing? Because I quite frankly, don't care. I'm not a researcher in that vein where that says, if everything is the same and we add this, what can we measure? I'm personally, I'm glad there's people doing that kind of work. I'm personally not interested in that. Somebody comes to me and they're suffering, I'm going to address everything all at once that I can. All the lifestyle issues, all of the nutrient issues, all of the supplement issues, anything that we can do to improve that person's life. And then, I don't know how to sort out what had a greater impact. I would probably say my experience says the lifestyle changes that I can get people to do long-term has the greatest benefit. Everything else is secondary to that. But again, like I said, I do use nutritional supplements in a pretty aggressive way. In our last podcast, I said that I like to use them medicinally in an effort to see change on testing that we do. And once we've done that, we hope that we can pull back on a lot of those nutritional supplements. We don't get our health from a plastic bottle. We get our health from our diet and our lifestyle, but we can use what's in the plastic bottle medicinally to get you from where you are to where you need to be. And then we can start pulling back on those things. And then we can recheck testing and, lab work over time and see if there's something that we need to bring back. So for example, there are people who are just very low in B12. And or folate, but let's just say B12, folate, and iron. Those are three things that I track pretty steadily. And there are people who are insufficient, and we use supplements. We get them where they need to be, make lifestyle change, and they stay there. They don't need to keep on supplementing. Then there are people who do exactly that, and then they make the lifestyle change, and then we recheck the blood work, and their B12 drops or their iron drops. So there's different reasons for that. And then we can recommend long-term approaches. So that's a kind of a long, precursor to answering your question. But you mentioned bone density. Okay. Well, the issue with bone density and women going through menopause, are a lot of the hormonal changes that occur, of course. But we've discussed how important it is to have protein in your diet sufficient enough to maintain the protein that the calcium sits on in your bones. So that would be collagen. And, collagen is a major storage, a major protein that we store in our bones. So if we say, where's all the protein storage in the human body, it's going to be in our muscles and our bones. And collagen is the main form in our bones. And if you lose collagen, just like you lose muscle, right? As we get older and we start to shrink, what's shrinking is our muscle, and what's shrinking is the collagen within our bones, and there's less collagen for that calcium to stick to. So is the problem that I'm not getting enough calcium? I don't think so. The problem is I'm losing protein. So resistance exercise and protein consumption are the two main supplements.
We don't hear too much about, collagen has been a popular supplement for soft tissues like your skin, and then like tendons and ligaments and stuff. But this is the first time I've heard someone talk about it for bone health, and that's really interesting to me. I think a lot more people would probably use collagen for that reason than, say, their tendons and ligaments if they knew how important it was.
I think that your body takes protein, breaks it down into the amino acids, and then manufactures the proteins that it needs, right? So if it needs muscle cells, it'll make muscle cells. If it needs enzymes, it'll make enzymes. If it needs collagen in your bones, it'll make collagen in your bones. I don't know that you necessarily have to. Now, is it nice that if you consume collagen, that it's in the same formula as the collagen that you'll Yes, I guess. But I can't imagine that you wouldn't make collagen protein from steak, right?
And these proteins get digested anyway and broken down into their amino acids and then just rebuilt, like you said. So it's a matter of getting amino acids from protein.
And it's probably based on need, right? So if you're doing resistance exercise, if you're rucking, if I were, like my wife right now, she's going through, I guess, what would be considered perimenopause in her early 50s. And she's out there with 30 pounds on her back, rucking on 5 days a week. That compression, first of all, it's zone 2. So she's driving her mitochondria. She's getting this compression that's giving her great posture and giving her great angulation of her joints, stimulating the muscles in the joints the way we want them stimulated. And that, the body can only respond to what you're doing. And if what you're doing is giving it stress, well, then it needs to get stronger. I don't care how old you are or what's going on with your hormones. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm not an endocrinologist. So I would assume there are some people who would benefit from hormone replacement therapy to mitigate the hormonal effects of getting older. But that would be something they would consult with an expert on. I don't think it's a good idea to be a couch potato and insulin resistant and overweight and all those things and taking hormone replacement therapy, right? So again, it's always a balance, whether you're going to go a medical route or a nutritional supplement route. It ultimately is all just medicine, whether it be natural or not, if you don't make the changes that you need to make, because nothing has a greater impact on your health and your life than your physical activity. It's the greatest drug known to man. There's nothing that even comes close to it. If that's not dialed in, everything else is a Band-Aid.
Yeah, I want to jump in here quick with the what you just said, Dr. G, with the lifestyle and the exercise and whatnot. I was talking with I think it was Mazar Fuentes on our podcast maybe 6 months ago. He's a really great high-end coach in Montreal. And I'd asked him if you could choose between sleep, nutrition, or exercise, what would be the most important for a client to do? And he said, and this was very interesting how he supported his statement. He said exercise, and I said sleep. And he said that if a client exercises properly and in the right amount, they will sleep better. So I never really quite thought of that. I know that's not the case probably in all situations, but what you're saying, like, and Andy, you mentioned maybe supplements with that support sleep. Like, is this person exercising 5 days, 6 days, 7 days a week properly for their body type and abilities? I think we see and this is actually new for me because I used to put sleep at number one, right? Then food, then exercise. But it's almost like exercise and movement is taking over number one because of how much it does affect the other stuff just as a byproduct. So when Mizar had said, have that client that doesn't sleep well exercise every day for 30 to 60 minutes and they will sleep better, I was like, you're onto something there. So sort of a sidebar there, but not really. It's sort of, again, I guess, emphasizing the importance of the three of them, but how all of them affect each other directly.
Yeah, I mean, a great, people, like, there was an argument when we were in school. It's like a little philosophical argument. What are the most important systems in your body and this and that? And somebody mentioned there's no more important bit of anatomy than your rectum. So everybody was like, what? The heart, the brain, the lungs. No, he goes, trust me, if I plug that hole up, you're going to have serious problems real quick. So you could argue anything.
Sure.
Right? It's a matter of just dialing in the system, live in a way that drives all of your systems, stresses all of your systems as much as possible, and you can't go wrong, right?
Yeah, well, that's why we call it a system. A system is a group of components that all work together, and you need them all.
Yeah.
If one thing's gone, nothing else works.
That's right.
We're going to be, so for listeners listening in and enjoying this content, we're going to be doing this at least once a month, the three of us. We have so many things. It's really just an endless amount that we could talk about. So we're going to be bringing you, more and more content. So Dr. G, how can listeners learn more about all the great things that you're doing?
It's everything Dr. Stephen G. So just like you see it down there, DrSteveng. All the social media, my website, drsteveng.com, Instagram, I'm most active, but also Facebook and LinkedIn and X. And I'm not very active on X. It's kind of a cesspool, but I'm starting to put a little bit more out there as well.
Well, awesome. And Andy, thank you for your time. I am really enjoying these conversations. For people that want to learn more about co-movement, co-movement.com. We offer personal training, nutrition coaching, a bunch of really, really great things. So until next time, guys, we'll catch you soon.
Thank you. Take care.
See you guys.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting our sponsors, Native Path Supplements, Lombardi Chiropractic, and A Dog's Day Out Doggy Daycare. They help us bring you 2 new episodes each month and have a special discount just for our listeners. See the show notes for more details. Thank you, and see you next time on the Co-Movement Gym podcast.